Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tranquil Code, a place to share code ideas in hopefully stress-free ways. This is my first video, and I'll be showing how to build a simple CRUD app using Node, Express, and Postgres. Since this is my first video, before we get started, I want to quickly go over who I am and why I made this channel. I'm currently a software engineer, and I owe a lot of where I am today to great people who share their information on YouTube with me and others. So I created this channel as a way to give back to the community. So what we're going to do in this video is first, I'm going to show you what the app looks like. Then we're going to go over general setup we need to do before coding. And finally, we're going to build the app. So here's the app. As you can see, it's not going to win any design awards or anything, but it's just a simple CRUD app. And I don't think I mentioned what a CRUD app was before, but essentially a CRUD app stands for create, read, update, and delete. So as you can see here, the create part is with the add, the update here is through changing values, the read is through the get, and the delete is through the delete portion of the app. I also wanted to quickly say that I'm using a Mac computer, and I also am using the Chrome browser, and I have a couple of plugins that are affecting the pages you see right now. The first one is a JSON viewer. So I will, if I click to get here, you'll see like all these kind of fancy things and where all this information is coming from and all this stuff. This is just a plugin called JSON Viewer, and it just helps you to display the data a little better on your computer. If I click this, you'll see that it looks a little bit different, and this toggles back on and off. I also have something called Dark Reader, which is great on my eyes. It just helps me. I love dark mode, so you can toggle it on and off, and it'll kind of go between those two. And here's just a page for that, and I'll have a link for both of those in the description if you like to check those out. But can't definitely highly recommend them. So going back to the application, as you saw, I got something and there was nothing in there. So let's go ahead and add something in there. We'll add hello. And so this now it shows in the database that has a name and then the value is hello. So if I go back and let's just say I wanted to update that value, then I have a tag here that says old value. So I put the hello in here. I want the new value to be by. I click update, and now the name says by instead of hello. And then if I wanted to get rid of that, I can just click on this delete form here and then click the delete button and then by, and then it'll give me back an empty response like it was before. So that's the basic overview of the application, and we're going to get right into building it next. So before we get started with the coding, really quickly want to go over how to install Node. Node is basically just a way for JavaScript to run outside of the browser, which is what you're looking at right now. That just a side note, that makes Node very, very powerful. It's a great language to learn. JavaScript's a great language to learn. So, and also, as you saw from the title of this video, we use Postgres as well. I'm not really going to cover how to do installation of Postgres. There's a ton of information on that on YouTube, everywhere else. I can do a video if if a few people would leave some comments in there and say they like me to do a video. I can definitely do that, but there's tons of videos online about that already. So for Node, this is the home page. I'm gonna leave a link to that in the description. And all you really need to do is just click on this button here. There's another version here you can download. It's newer, but it may be buggier. So the safest bet is probably just to go with this version here. Click on download. I already have a downloaded copy here, but you see it's only like 20 megabytes. It doesn't take very long. So you open up the installer, pretty straightforward. Just click OK, agree to the license agreement. You're definitely welcome to read through all this if you want. I don't for this. I kind of trust it, but so, if you feel free to read it if you need to. And then for the installation, it's 72 megabytes. So click install, approve it if you're on a Mac. And it's going to install. And then when it's done, click close, and you're finished. And that's the installation of it. Also, before we get started, I want to quickly go over what the table will look like when that's where we're going to be storing all our data in Postgres. So this is just a very basic table with one column, and the column is name. That's where all the values are going to be stored. I'll quickly go back to the app, and you see like this is empty and this is empty. If I go to add something into the database, then you see it shows up here in the JSON as name, which is the name of the column, and the value, which is M. If I go back here and I refresh this page, you see that this shows the same thing. Column name is name, and then value is M. So they're just showing two different ways of seeing the same data that's stored on Postgres. even just to quickly show if I can delete the M, there's nothing here now, and there's also nothing here. So nothing big in this section. Just wanted to just quickly note what, or where rather, we're going to be storing the data for Postgres. They're going to say npm init. That's going to start our package manager. And we can just enter through all these things here. If you want to look at all that and how to configure your application, there's tons of great resources for that, but we're just going to go through that really quickly. Now we have our package.json file, and then next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a file called app.js. This is where we're going to have all of our application code in. And now that we have this, let's just say console.log hello. Actually, you know what? Let me make this text a little bigger. Maybe not that big. No, maybe that big. Sure, we'll do this big. Okay, there we go. So we'll say console.log hello and save. And then we'll say node app.js. And if it says hello, then it means that everything's connected, everything's working. So now we can actually start writing the server code. So we'll start by calling in the express library. So it's a const express. Require express. And then we'll not save that yet. We're going to install it. So npm install express. Because if we saved it before, then there would have been an error. So we're going to save that, and it's a really quick background on what we're doing here is we downloaded the JavaScript code that is in this library called Express, and you can see all the libraries here, and you can see Express itself there. All these libraries are what Express depends on to run. And so we just pulled that in, so now we can access that code if we use a variable called, we'll say app equals express. And now we have all the things that we could access on Express, we can access through this app variable. So to get, we'll use this to start our server, and we'll say app.listen. And this takes a port, and we'll give it a callback function. So we're gonna, for our port, we'll just say const port equals, we'll say 3000. And then we'll add our port variable here. And then we're going to give a function. And this is, we'll just say console.log, and then server started on port started on port 3000. Okay, so we'll save this, and then we'll start our server by doing the same thing we did earlier. Say node app.js. And then it says server started on port 3000. So we can't really do anything with this yet, but before we go on to the next part, I'm just going to clean up this code a little bit. We're going to modernize it by using arrow functions, and we're also going to use backticks for this part of the code because to make it a little easier to work with. And I'm going to be using this code, this syntactic sugar as they call it, even though it works the same, it just looks a little different for the rest of the code. So I just want to go over differences. So now if we stop the server and we start the server again, you'll see it does the exact same thing. So just slightly different look here, but it's just a more modern way of writing out the function and the strings there. But you noticed here, to see these changes on this server, we had to stop the server and restart the server. So we're actually going to call another library called nodemon. So we're going to npm install nodemon. And essentially what that does is just let us save. Anytime we save a file, it will reflect those changes on the server, and we don't have to stop and start the server like we did before. So to run that, we're going to use our npm runner, npx, say nodemon app.js. And so now you see server started on port 3000. If I were to change this to 4000 here, you see that the changes automatically reflected. And if I go back, it'll be on 3000. So that's how that works. So, but now we have this server running, but if we were to go to localhost 3000 and click enter, it says cannot get slash, which is the home route. So our server is running and it's giving us something back, because if we were to stop this and we were to hit this, it would say site can't be reached. So the server's running, but we need to give it something to do when it makes a call out to that home route. So let's go ahead and say in between our variables here in the app.listen, we'll say app.get. We'll say the home route here, and we'll do request and response, and we'll do our arrow function, and then we'll see, we'll request, or actually response dot send, and we'll say hello. There, we'll save that. We'll go back and we need to start up our server again. So starting up our server, and then we'll go over here and we'll say 3000, and bam, we have hello. So now whenever we go to this address, we'll respond back with hello. So now what we're going to do is we're going to, instead of giving back just one word, why don't we try giving back some HTML. So open up a new file by just double clicking on this top bar. You can go up in the top bar and click new file. I'm going to change my environment to HTML so I can use some of the cool shortcuts that VS Code has. So if you hit the exclamation mark and tab, it'll give you a whole HTML template. And if you hit, and then inside this template in the body, we're going to say P and then tab to open this up, and we'll say hello. And we're going to go down here, P tab, and say my friend. And this isn't a course on HTML. There's a lot more of HTML. This is just a very basic CRUD thing. So we're going to keep it minimal on the front end. But I did want to at least kind of show, because we will be having a little bit of HTML, of how we're sending back the HTML from our server. So we're going to get rid of this hello here, and I just want to show you another cool thing about backticks. If we were to paste the HTML page into this quotes, it would give us a whole bunch of errors, and it's not able to work like that. Excuse me. But if we use the backticks here, and then we paste it in this way, and then there's no errors, and we're able to expand it over multiple lines. So backticks are really useful for things where you need to have your strings structured in a certain way to be able to see all of it, because you could have it in one straight line, but it's easier to edit to looking like this. So if we save this and we go back to our local host, we'll see hello and my friend here. So we're actually able to return back this HTML page. And a cool example that I wanted to show of giving back, sending HTML response, is use something a little bit more stylish than what we just made there. So I'm going to go to IGN.com, which is a gaming website. If it'll let me see, refresh here. Let's see, have a great suspender thing here that suspends my apps when I'm not using them. Here we go. So we're going to view the page source code, and we're going to take all this HTML and we're going to add it to the response in our server. I'm going to click save. And we're going to go back and we're going to hit refresh, and now we have IGN on our coming back from our server, and it's not the actual IGN page, because if we click on some of these links, we'll see it'll say it cannot get whatever this is, in the same way that we could not get our home page when we earlier tried to go to a page without giving a response from the server. So our server only has the IGN page instead of all these all the pages that would be required for the site to be working correctly. If we were to go to like this page here and click on it, we see their server does have a response for this page, but our server does not. So it will always end up with a cannot get to a 404 error there. So we're gonna, let's go back here. We're gonna go back to our HTML, and we're gonna get rid of this. And we're going to do a form, and so I type form tab, and the action is going to be, we're going to have this go to info, see here, /get. That's where the page is going to look to find or to send the request. And then we're going to have a method, and this is going to be the type of request we're going to send. So we're going to say it's going to be a get. And inside this form, we're just going to have an input, and we're just going to scroll down here to submit. And the value is going to be get. and that's just going to be the words on the button. So if we go back here and we paste this into our code and we save it and we click refresh, we'll say goodbye to IGN and hello to our Git. And just like how we couldn't get those pages in IGN, we also cannot get this info/git page because we have not yet done something on the server to create a response for that page. So, but before we get into how that works, I want to quickly go over middleware because that's an important concept for servers and Express servers in particular. So what we're going to do is to start our middleware function, we're going to say app.use. And I guess just a quick background on middleware. Middleware are just things that run in between your server calls. So the code runs here, and then before it would, if you clicked on the Git button, before it went to this and ran all this code here, it would go back to this app.use function. And it would be like, is there anything in here? Is there anything we need to do in here? So to give it a quick example of that, I'm going to say, we're going to say app.use. I'm going to have a request. Oh, and also this is a good time to note that most times people don't type out all these words here. They just say rec, res, at least the examples I've seen. There could be some other people who do type them all out, but this is something you'll see very common. So we're going to stick to that naming convention because we're going to be typing out request and response a lot. So we just say rec and res, and we're going to do this here, and then we're going to console.log, and we'll say ran in between server call. Spelling is okay because it's not a spelling test. So we'll go here and refresh this page, and if we see, it's refreshing, but something's happening when the page hasn't actually refreshed. This is loading and it says waiting for localhost. So if we go back here, we'll see that our code actually did run in between the server call, but we need to actually include next so that when it gets to here, it doesn't just stop and it can actually continue on to the next part of the code. So if we call this next function, we refresh that, and then we refresh here, and you see that now the page is loading okay, and we can do the things that we could before. So this is a good way to add in authentication and to add in logging for your app. There's a lot of cool things you can do with middleware. It's very useful. But instead of us using our custom middleware, though, we're going to actually add some middleware from a library, and we're going to call the Morgan library. Morgan equals require Morgan. And this is just a logger app library that helps us see what's going on with everything in our server. So we'll just say npm install Morgan. We'll click enter. And then we're going to go, let's see, we're going to, instead of all this stuff we have here, we're going to get rid of our custom middleware, and we're just going to say Morgan, and we're going to type in dev. And we'll click save, and then we'll start up our server again. And we're going to go back here and click refresh. And we should see that now when we click refresh, we have some information here. We have a get, which is the type of request. We have the slash, which is the route, and we have the response from the server. And so there's a lot of really cool things you can do with middleware like this. You can even change the tags you have in here. And if I click refresh here, it'll be the same general information, but there'll be some new stuff here as a date now. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with this middleware, but we're just going to keep it on dev. And then we're going to actually start connecting the Postgres server so that we can have a response for when we click that button. So we're going to say const pool equals require PG. And then we're going to say let pool, lowercase, equal pool, new pool. So we're making an instance of this object, and I am not 100% sure. I believe it's called destructuring, but don't quote me on that. But essentially, what we're doing here, and the reason why this looks different, is because there is a property on this PG library called pool, and if we were to write it the other way, we could say const. Let's say const PG equals require PG. and we have that, and then we could say let pool2 equal new pg.pool. And so it's the same thing. You see, it has the same properties here. It's just the way we did it before. It's just a cleaner way to write it. It also has it like that in documentation. So I'm just going to stick with that. But I'll have a link to Morgan and the pool library and all these really great libraries in the description for you to check out if you're interested in learning more about them, because documentation on those is great and you can learn a whole lot from it. So now that we have this pool here, we're going to, after this home get function, we're going to say another get function, and we're going to call that the info/get, which is what we previously did not have a response for. We're going to have our rec and our res, and we're going to say our arrow functions goes here, and now we're going to say pool dot connect, and we're going to have in our parameters, we're going to have error, client, and release. And then we're going to hit this here. And inside of this, we're going to have a try. Actually, on the outside of this, we're going to have a try catch. And try catch basically just, if there's an error that happens, it will catch the error and you can decide what you want to do with it. Normally errors, unhandled errors crash the program, but in this way we're just going to log the error as opposed to having it crash the program. So now we have this connect here, and we're going to say client.query and then have the backticks, and we're going to use our Postgres query to connect. It's going to be select star from test. But before we do this, we're going to have to add in one more library, because this PG library requires, or at least to my understanding, requires environment variables to configure and connect to your Postgres library. So we're going to say const, it's going to be just require, require dot env dot config. Okay, and then what this is going to do, we're actually going to stop the server. We're going to npm install .env. And what this does is it allows us to add environment variables through this library. And environment variables is variables that are going on in the background that you can't really see, but I can actually do a quick example of that. So let's comment this out, because this code is going to probably throw an error if we try to run it without setting up our environment, configuring it to Postgres correctly. So let's run our server, and it says, oh, PG module not found. You know what? I must have not installed PG. So let's npm install PG. Definitely gotta install PG for it to be okay. Okay, so now we try to start up our server. Okay, that works. So now, just to really quickly go over environment variables, we defined our port as 3000 up here. So let's put this down here, and let's make a new file called .env. And then we're going to, in this .env, we're going to say port equals 3000, and we're going to, oops, and no semicolon. That tripped me up before. For these environment variables, no semicolons. And also you'll see that this environment variable is environment has been triggered on my VS Code, and it's not like that by default. You have to install a plugin, and I can actually go over some of these extensions rather that I have here. So you can see enabled here, I have bracket pair colorizer, and that just makes these brackets match colors, and it's really helpful when you have these big functions with all these different parentheses and brackets that you're trying to keep track of. And I also have this .env, that is what you see here, that is making these colors appear, giving them syntax and highlight. I believe that's all the ones. Oh, I also have VS icons, which is really cool because it lets you, if I go back to here, it gives you some custom icons that I think are a little bit more intuitive than the default icons for VS Code. So a lot of really great plugins. If you know some cool plugins you think I should check out, you can drop them in the comments. But I think the plugins are what make VS Code really powerful. So our port without the semicolon has been saved. If we click, if we go here and we say process .env.port and save that. And then, let's change this environment to like 8,000 or something so we actually know that it's changing. And then we save this here. You'll see it says server started on 8,000. So we actually would have to go to our port at 8,000. See the page come back. So you see this is coming from an environment variable as opposed to our actual server code. And the reason people do this is if you're sharing your code with people, you may want to show what you did, but you don't want to have the actual information, your private information, how you configured your servers, because that stuff's private. Other people could log into your server and do all sorts of things. So it's just a way to have everything configured, and then you can, when you push to get, you can ignore this file and everything else will show up, and so people can set up their own configurations and not see your private information. So with this file right here, we're going to add in our Postgres configuration. So we're going to say pg port equals 5432, and this is stuff you would have done when you installed your Postgres library. And I'm trying to keep these things really close to the default as possible. That's why you see great names like Postgres for my PG host and Postgres for my PG database. Also, you have to spell these things correctly. If you don't spell these things correctly, there's going to be an error somewhere. We're probably going to see an error somewhere, but and if there's an error, we're just going to try to power on through, because this is going to be, I'm not a great video editor. I'm going to try to shoot this in one take so it can just be taken care of. But we see we have, let's see, I already did PG port was 5432, PG host was localhost, not Postgres. So localhost, Postgres for PG database, PG users, Postgres, and PG password is the very secure password. So I would not recommend setting up a server that you're going to use for any project like this, unless you're just a throwaway project and you don't care who sees your data. But this is just a very simple server that I have nothing on except for the example for here, just that one database with the name, that table with the name column. So now that we've done that, we can go and uncomment this, and we'll continue with the code here, and we'll say we'll assign this response, because this is what we'll get back from here is a response to a variable called resp. And then we can console.log. Actually, let's send it. So we'll response.send the resp.rows. And there's a lot of properties on this response variable that when the information gets returned back from here, but rows is what gives us the information that's actually in the database. So if we save this here and we click on the get, you'll see that there is nothing seems to have happened. We click on here, everything seems to be okay, but there's nothing in here, and that's a problem. When you click on a response from here, even if the table is empty, which this one should be, you should still see an empty array appear here on this. So, and the reason that is because this is asynchronous, and so we tried to run this, and so this code went and tried to do its thing, but in the meantime, we went on to the next line and didn't wait for this to finish. And so this didn't get any sort of response back. So we just went ahead and said, I'm just going to show you what I got. I don't have anything here. And later on this finished, and we never got to see it because it finished at some other time. But if you want to change that, we have this async await. And this lets us run asynchronous or more than one things in our code at a time. So essentially what's happened is the code will start running like almost like in a circle, and it'll stop right here and be like, oh, this code needs to run. So it'll let this code go, and it'll come back in, and then it'll keep on going. So now we can actually wait for the response. So if we save this and we go back and we click get, you'll see that now we actually have an empty array, and this is my plugin again. But if we didn't have our plugin, we just see just an empty array. This is what you may see if you don't have this plugin, but this is what we're looking for. We're looking for an actual response back from Postgres that tells us that we have no information returned. So that's good. So now we actually have finished the the read portion of our application. So we're going to add the next part, and so I'm going to go back to this here, and I'm going to copy this form, and we're going to say we're going to actually add information to the form now. So let's say add here. Method is going to be post in this case, and this type is going to be submit, and the value is going to be add here. But we're actually going to add a couple more things in here, which are going to be input of actually it's label. So label, this is going to be label for add, and we're going to say add is what the text we're going to use here. And then we're going to have another input. This is going to be of type text, so we're going to scroll down to text. And then the name is going to be add, the ID is going to be add, and if we copy this and put it back in our HTML right here, and we save this. Oh, you know what? I think, okay, I'm not missing a form. Thought I was missing a form, but it just was out over there. So we save this, we go back to our home page and hit refresh, and now we have our ad, so we can actually get text back here and we can click add. Of course, we cannot post to this because there is not a post route set up, so we're going to set up that right now. We're going to basically just copy this code here because it's going to be very similar. We're going to paste this down here. We're going to say app dot type in here app.post. And I'm actually going to paste this, just comment this out for just a second. And to do that, just in case you don't know, that's just either control slash or command slash, whatever system you're using. And then we're going to grab the request. This is the first time I'm interacting with the request, and we're just going to let's res.send rec.body. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to grab from the form that we have here. We're going to type something in. We're going to send it from the front end and try to view it on the back end, and then we're going to send a response back on the front end to let us know that the data was able to go back and forth. So if we go back to here, hit refresh, let's just try typing hello, and we click add here, and it says we cannot post. So I forgot to change the route here, so let's change the route to add to make sure that our app knows where to get to that. And we click back, and then we'll try it again, and we will see, oh, there is, let's see here. It looks like it almost ran, but something went wrong here. So let's see, make sure everything's working here. We have our info add, method post, we have our add button, we have all this information here, we have our submit, we have our rest.send rec.body. I don't see anything. Let me console.log this to make sure that nothing's going wrong here too. Console.log rec.body. We'll save this and we'll go back here. Let's see. Let's refresh this again. Just type hello, and then we'll click add, and it says undefined. Okay, so that means that we're not able to, the body isn't actually being sent to this route here, which is, I'm not sure exactly what's going on. We are sending it to here, sending it the post. We have the label. We do have this information here. There should be a, oh, okay, and this is, yes, we need to add in our middleware. So this is another great use of middleware. If we try to do this without certain things in the application, we're not going to be actually able to send the data back and forth. So what we're going to use is app, let's say app.use, and then express .url encoded. And then we're going to have some inside that function. We're going to have extended true. I'm not going to get into too many details about this. Just know that this is a way for the request that we were asking to view to be parsed. Without this, we can't actually go through the request data and do anything with it. So we're also going to use one explicitly for JSON. And JSON is just a way of organizing data. I think it stands for JavaScript Object Notation, JSON. Yeah, JavaScript Object Notation, I believe is what it is. But you can always look that up because I sure don't know everything. So we'll say JSON, express.json, and we'll save that. And now if we save this, it says, oh, it says that body parses deprecated. So I would say, like, there's older versions that body parse is a library that lets this actually happen. That's where the URL encode is coming from. But this is basically telling me that I did not spell extended right. It's X10 You know what? I can't even think. It's been a long day, so I'm just going to copy this in because I am a boss. Here we go. Extended true. So we're going to click back on here. We're going to click add. And now we actually see that we're getting a response. We're able to parse our data. We're able to view our data. But it's important to note that this is not on the database. We're parsing back the response that we got on the server. But we have not saved the data to anything. So if I go back here and I type hello2, hello's gone and hello2 is here. So we aren't actually saving the data, but we are getting ready to go ahead and save the data right now. So what we're going to do is, now that we have this response being sent back, we're going to uncomment all of these things here. We know that all this stuff works, so we're going to get rid of this. And we saw the console.log was working. We have that information down there as well. Oh, this is a good example of JSON too. You can see JSON is just its key value pairs is essentially like a JavaScript hash map in a sense. So that's all it really is. And then we have this is going to stay exactly the same. The pool.connect. We have our synchronous function. We have our try catch to catch any errors, but we're going to add in a different query because we want this, instead of to get, we want to actually add things instead of getting this. So what we're going to do, I'm going to look up the query real quick because I don't remember. I'm not great with SQL, but we're going to say insert. That'll say too, like if you're thinking I'm copying all this stuff and you're thinking like, oh, this guy's a great developer, because I used to watch videos of people write things like this, and some people are really smart. Like there's this guy, I think code guarding with CJ or something like that. I'll probably post a link to that at some point, but this guy can just type stuff out of his head. He's amazing, but I'm not that. I'm still learning, and if you have to look at notes and stuff to type and do all these things, then you go ahead and look at your notes, because it is not a memorization game. It's just I've learned more from trying to get this video together than I ever imagined, but you don't have to memorize things to be a good coder. You can, as long as you can build it, you're good to go. I would recommend memorizing concepts though, because concepts will definitely be on your side there. So let's just say rec.body.add. And so what we're doing here, instead of saying the rec.body, we're adding in this add key right here has a value of hello. So we're just going to, instead of adding this object, our name database only allows for strings to be added. And so we're just going to add, we name the string add up here. And so we're just going to name whatever is in this part right here, which is a string you see from the quotes, and that's going to be added to our database. And also what we're going to do, instead of rest.send, is we're going to rest.redirect, so we can go to our get function and see the new updates we have just made. So let's go ahead and say rest.redirect, and we'll say info/get, and we'll save that. We'll go back here and then we'll refresh, and then we'll say hello. And let's see, it says cannot get info/info/get, so which means I typed this in wrong over, it should be over, oh, you know what? It says it cannot get info/info/get, which makes me think that this submit button is incorrect. So this does say info add. This does say info add. I wonder, maybe we didn't refresh this page correctly. So let's refresh this and say hello. Click add. It still says can't get info/info/get. So I'm somewhere I have messed this up. Oh, you know, something I just noticed too. We need to, we're going to release our pool here, and I didn't really talk about pools very much, but essentially what a pool does is, for when you connect to a database, it gives you a lot of different ways to connect to the database, so you don't have to, every time you connect to the database, turn the database on, turn the database off, and open up these different connections. You can just have one connection on all the time, and you can just stream it out to get the information that you're looking for. So, but now back to this info/info. I'm trying to see, I see the information here, and it says info/get. This is the info/add. And when it clicks add, it should take me to here. So maybe I'll console.log. You'll see some of my debugging process here. Console.log and say made it. And we'll see if this actually gets in here. Okay, so we will save that. We'll go back here, refresh just in case, and then we'll click, let's just say EE, and then click right here. So it is going through here. So it looks like, I think the problem is it seems like it goes here okay, and then let's console.log the response, make sure that's working through okay. So go back here, click this, click here, go back over here, and the response is working okay. So it's something to do with the rest.redirect. It's when all these things work, and we're probably going to see there's a lot of things been added to this database since we've just been doing this over and over again. So what happens is it's sending back a response, but it's giving it to info/get/get for some reason. So maybe I'm just going to say /get. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. We have to hack a solution. You probably see it and I don't. Okay, now it says /get. So let's go, let's say info here, because that's what we're trying to get, /info/get. Maybe I didn't have the slash in there. Maybe that's what it was. We'll click this. Hey, look at that. We just add all these things to the database. Okay, so now you see, like, I typed all these things in. Our code to add things in the database is working just fine. It's just our redirect function was not working. Okay, but now we have that working all right. We can see all these things we've added. Clearly, our added function is working great. So now that we have that, we're going to go on to the next function, which will be the delete. So for delete, we're just going to copy this because this is really similar to the add, and all the rest of these things are honestly really similar to the add. And everywhere we see add, we're just going to say delete. So I'm just going to copy this because copy and paste is your best friend as a coder. I remember when I was younger and just starting out coding, I thought like all cool coders typed everything out, and they just like knew how to, back to that whole like, oh, everyone who does code, they memorize everything and they know all these things. Not necessarily. Like, it's okay to copy and paste, but just make sure you know what it is you're copying and pasting, or else you might end up in trouble with something you've pasted in that you don't understand how it works. But now we see our form here is working. All we did was just change all our adds to delete, and now we need to add our delete route, because if we click delete here, it'll say can't post to info/delete. So we're going to go and copy again, because we love copy and paste, and I'm going to say delete here. And then we're gonna keep this, and honestly the only thing we're gonna change here is the query, because this just has a single value. So I want to type in the query, look back to my notes on this SQL function, and what it is, it's delete from test where name equals. You may wonder too, if you're not familiar with SQL, why I'm capitalizing some things and why some things are lowercase. In SQL, it's just a good idea that keywords are capitalized and everything else you kind of is not, and that just helps you understand what is actually what SQL code is being used to do things, and what SQL code is like a variable or something like that. So let's do our temperate literal here. Is we're going to delete from where rec.body equals delete. We're going to save this, and we're going to, let's look and see what we're going to delete. So let's get rid of those EEs. I don't like those EEs. It's time for them to go. So we click delete, and it goes back here, and we see that the EEs have been deleted from our database. And I guess another thing to notice too is that whereas before I talked about our data not actually persisting because we weren't connected to the database, now we're actually connected to the database. So I could even open up a whole new window, go to localhost, I think it was 8,000 what we're on. And if I click get, no matter what I do, this information is stored on the database. It's saved. It's not going anywhere. So that's just the difference between the data actually persisting and being saved versus just giving back a response saying like, hey, I did this for you, but it's not actually being saved. So now we're going to go to the last part of our application, and next we're going to go to our form. And this form is just a little bit more complicated, but not too much more. We're just going to add two labels here, two labels and two inputs. And we're going to call this name update, still a post method. I'm going to change this to update. And then this is going to be a label for kind of old value. and then the name is going to be old value, and delete is going to be old value. And I feel like a hypocrite because I just told everybody about copy and paste, and here I am typing everything out. But you know what? Do you, man. Just whatever floats your boat, just go for it. So we're going to say new value, and then, oh, actually I meant to make this old value as well, not update, old value. Let's see, so living that hypocrite life and typing it out still. Let's see, new value, and let's see, new value, and ID of new value, and this is going to be update. Okay, so if we save this, we go back to our page here, click refresh, we now have our old value, new value, update. It's going to say cannot post to update, so we're going to get to that. So let's go back here. Let's copy and paste our delete function, and we're going to paste it right down here, and then we're going to change this to update. Luckily, this does not change a whole lot, even though the front end function did change a lot. Honestly, at this point, all we're doing is changing the queries. It's pretty simple. So we're going to say, find my reference for this one because it's the longest SQL function of all of them. Update, test, there's a database, set name equal. So this is the value we're going to be updating. So our temperate literal here. And that is not the right thing. So money sign, money, and rec dot body dot old value, and then we're going to say, so we need to put this inside of some quotes here, and this will be where. Let's see. Oh, and I think the set is actually supposed to be capitalized. All sorts of hypocrisy going on here. I'm gonna tell y'all one thing: do as I say, not as I do. And let's see, names equal to, in quotes, and then we'll say temperate literal again, and then rec dot body dot new value. Okay. And then this should work. I'm a little confused as to why this temperate literal here, or this backtick, is blue. So I feel like, we're going to save it and see what happens, but I feel like something about that just doesn't seem right. It could just be, maybe y'all don't even see it. Maybe it's just me. But let's look in here. Let's delete this hellos we have here. We're going to get rid of those hellos, and we'll try to replace them with by and see if that works. Update it. It did not work. So this was not configured correctly. So let me check my code to make sure this is all right. So this looks right, but usually when this happens, oh, you know what? I flip-flopped it. So this is the new value here, and this is the old value. Okay, I've done that so many times before. Like I said, I'm a SQL master. I am not. So we click update here. Now it'll say bye. Now everything's updated. So that's working. So I believe that's everything. So we'll go back through and why don't we delete our by values from here. And then let's just go through and show the entire working application. And so first we're going to get, there's nothing in here. We're going to add hello. We're going to add here. Now we have updated hello. We're going to change our hello to by. So update that. And then now it says by. That's the only item in here. And then we're going to delete that by. And now there's nothing in here. So we have successfully completed our full stack application, and everything's working the way it's supposed to be. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was a good experience. If you have any suggestions for how to make this better for you, or to make it more involved, or just anything that you can think of, you can drop a comment, let me know. Like I said, again, this is for me to give back to the community, because I've received a lot from the community. I've learned a lot from the community, and would definitely not be where I am today without all the great YouTubers who share their information with me. So I'm hoping that this will be of benefit for you and that you'll get a lot out of it. And yeah, like I said, appreciate any feedback. And if you like the video, feel free to drop a like. You may be the first person to have a like on this video. This is my very first video. Or if you don't like it, feel free to drop a dislike. You can be the first person to drop a dislike. Any feedback is good feedback. Always happy to try to improve and get better. And I really appreciate your time. And let me know if I miss anything in the description. And I hope you have a great day and hope to see you again next time.